if you're driving through Wyoming during a snowstorm and you see a man standing on the side of the road, do not stop, because the police later told me something that still keeps me awake at night. December 2024. My name is Ethan. I was driving across Wyoming after visiting my sister. The weather forecast said light snow. Instead, a massive snowstorm hit the highway. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The road was empty. No cars, no trucks, just darkness and snow. Then I saw him, a man standing beside the road, completely still. No jacket, no gloves, no hat, just standing there, watching the highway. My headlights passed over him. For a second I considered stopping, but something felt wrong. His face wasn't moving. He wasn't waving for help. He wasn't reacting to the storm. He was simply staring. I kept driving. 10 minutes later, I saw him again. Same clothes, same posture, same face, standing beside the road. My stomach dropped. There was no possible way. I hadn't turned around. I was moving in a straight line, yet somehow he was ahead of me again. I drove faster. The radio suddenly filled with static. Then a voice whispered, "Turn around." I nearly crashed. The voice sounded human, but distorted, like someone speaking underwater. The radio died. My GPS froze. Outside, the snow became even heavier. Then headlights appeared behind me. A state trooper. Relief flooded through me. I pulled over. The officer approached. I told him everything. The man, the radio, the repeated sightings. The officer's face went pale. He asked one question. "Did you stop for him?" I said no. The officer nodded. Then he told me to follow him immediately. No explanation, no questions, just follow. For 30 minutes we drove through the storm. Eventually, we reached a small town. Inside the station, the officer showed me a photograph. My blood froze. It was the same man, the exact same face. The officer said the picture was taken in 1987. The man had died during a blizzard. His body was found frozen beside the highway, exactly where I'd seen him. The officer then told me something worse. Every few years, someone reports seeing him, and almost every person who stops disappears. To this day, no one knows where they go. The officer's words stayed with me for the rest of the night. I wanted to believe he was joking, or maybe trying to scare me, but the look in his eyes told me otherwise. There was something he wasn't telling me, something much worse. The storm continued outside. Snow hammered against the station windows. The wind howled through the streets of the small town. I couldn't sleep. Around 4 a.m., I decided to get some coffee from the station's break room. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed the officer standing alone near a bulletin board, staring at a collection of missing person photographs. Dozens of faces, men, women, even teenagers, all reported missing along the same stretch of highway. The same highway where I'd seen the man. The officer noticed me watching. For a moment he hesitated. Then he sighed and motioned for me to come closer. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly. He pointed toward one photograph. A young man around my age. The picture had been taken only 2 years earlier. He stopped. The officer said. I felt a chill run through my body. The officer pointed to another photo. Then another. Then another. Every single person had disappeared after reporting the same thing. A man standing in a snowstorm, watching the road, waiting. The next morning, the storm finally cleared. I thanked the officer and prepared to leave town. Before I got into my car, he handed me a small piece of paper. It contained only one sentence. "If you see him again, keep driving, no matter what happens." I folded the note and put it in my pocket, then started the long drive home. For several hours, nothing happened. The sun was shining, traffic was normal, and I began convincing myself the entire experience was behind me. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Only static. The same static I've heard on the highway. Then a voice whispered, "Turn around." My blood turned cold. The call disconnected. I immediately checked my mirrors. The road behind me was empty, or so I thought, because a few seconds later, I noticed a figure standing on an overpass ahead, motionless, watching the traffic below. As I got closer, my stomach tightened. It was him. The same man. The same clothes. The same frozen expression. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, determined not to look, not to stop, not to acknowledge him. The overpass disappeared behind me, and eventually I convinced myself it was over. Until that night, when I arrived home, I found something waiting in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just a plain white envelope. Inside was a photograph of my car, taken during the snowstorm. The image showed my vehicle driving along the highway, and standing only a few feet behind it was the man, watching, smiling. For the first time, on the back of the photograph, someone had written a message in shaky handwriting. Next time, stop. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've changed my phone number, moved to a different state, and avoided driving at night whenever possible. But every winter, when the first snow begins to fall, my radio fills with static for a few seconds. And sometimes, just before the signal returns, I hear the same whisper, "Turn around." And every time I hear it, I check my mirrors, because a part of me still fears that one day I'll see him standing there again. I thought being alone in a forest tower would be the easiest job of my life, until I started receiving radio calls from a tower that didn't exist. Summer 2025, I accepted a seasonal job in Montana. My job was simple: watch for forest fires, report smoke, stay in the lookout tower. The nearest person was miles away. For the first week, nothing happened. Then one night, the radio crackled. A voice said, "Tower 12, do you copy?" I answered. The voice sounded relieved. Thank God, we thought everyone was gone. I checked my map. There was no Tower 12. I told the man he had the wrong frequency. Silence. Then, if you're hearing this, leave before sunset tomorrow. The transmission ended. The next day, I reported it. Nobody knew what I was talking about. There had never been a Tower 12. That night, the radio returned. Same voice, more desperate. There, coming up the stairs, heavy breathing followed, then screaming, then silence. I couldn't sleep. The next evening, I looked through binoculars. Far away, across a valley, I saw another tower, a tower that wasn't on any map. My heart pounded. A light appeared in the window. Someone was waving, frantically, begging for help. I grabbed my truck, started driving. The road led into thick forest. After 2 hours, the tower vanished. Not hidden, not blocked. Gone, as if it had never existed. Back at my station, I checked old records, buried inside an archive. I found something. In 1978, Tower 12 existed. A fire trapped 3 workers. All 3 died. The tower burned down. For decades, lookout workers occasionally reported radio calls from Tower 12. Every report sounded identical. The same voice, the same warning, and every witness eventually quit. Because the radio calls never stopped. At first, I told myself I was done with Tower 12. The records explained everything, or at least, that was what I wanted to believe. But 3 nights later, the radio crackled again. The same static, the same voice. Only this time, he knew my name. Jacob. My blood froze. I had never told anyone on the radio my name. I slowly reached for the microphone. "Who is this?" Several seconds passed. Then the voice answered. "We found the basement." The transmission ended. I sat motionless in my chair, my heart hammering inside my chest. There was never any mention of a basement in the reports. The official documents only said the tower burned down. Nothing more. The next morning, I drove into town, determined to learn everything I could. An elderly ranger named Walter had worked those forests for decades. When I mentioned Tower 12, the color drained from his face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he quietly locked the office door and pulled down the blinds. "What I'm about to tell you," he whispered, "never made it into the official reports." According to Walter, the fire wasn't the first strange thing that happened at Tower 12. For months before the tragedy, workers reported hearing footsteps at night, footsteps climbing the stairs, even when nobody was outside. They reported voices coming through disconnected radios and lights moving between the trees, miles from any road. Then one night, one of the workers disappeared. His boots were found near the tower entrance, but the man himself was never seen again. A week later, the fire happened, and Tower 12 was destroyed. Officially, everyone blamed faulty wiring. Unofficially, nobody believed that story, not even Walter. That night, I returned to my tower, trying to convince myself that none of this was real. The sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains. Darkness covered the forest. And then, the radio came alive again. Jacob. The voice sounded closer now, clearer. "We can see your tower." I immediately rushed to the window. Nothing. Just endless forest and darkness. Then another transmission arrived. Looked toward the valley. My hands trembled as I grabbed my binoculars. Far across the valley, a light appeared. The same tower, Tower 12, standing exactly where I had seen it before. Only this time, there were lights in every window and figures moving inside, dozens of them. I counted at least 20 silhouettes, walking slowly from room to room. My breathing became shallow. The record said only 3 people died there. So who were the others? Suddenly, one of the figures stopped and turned directly toward me. Even from miles away, I knew it was looking at me. Then another figure stopped, and another, until every silhouette inside the tower was facing my direction. Watching, waiting. The radio exploded with static. Then came the voice, "Come find us." Every light inside Tower 12 instantly went dark. The tower vanished into the night, and for the first time, I noticed something even worse. The forest below my tower was completely silent. No wind, no insects, no birds, nothing. Then, very faintly, I heard footsteps coming from outside. Slow, heavy, climbing the stairs, one step at a time. The sound echoed through the wooden structure. Step, step, step. My stomach tightened. Nobody should have been there. The nearest road was miles away. The footsteps continued climbing, getting closer and closer until they stopped directly outside the door. Silence filled the tower. I could barely breathe. Then came 3 slow knocks. K-N-O-C-K, K-N-O-C-K, K-N-O-C-K. The radio crackled one final time, and the voice whispered, "We finally found your tower." The door handle began to turn. Slowly, very slowly, as if something on the other side already knew. I was standing there, waiting. The final passenger on my bus ride shouldn't have existed, because according to police records, she died 3 years earlier. My name is Ethan Brooks. I drove a late-night bus route in Oregon. The shift was boring. Most nights ended quietly. One rainy evening, I made my final stop. A young woman boarded. She wore a gray coat. Her face looked pale, almost sick. She sat alone in the back. We drove for 20 minutes. Nobody got on. Nobody got off. Then I checked the mirror. The seat was empty. I slammed the brakes. The woman was gone. Impossible. The doors never opened. The bus never stopped. I searched the vehicle. Nothing. No passenger. No sign she'd ever been there. The next night, she returned. Same coat. Same face. Same seat. This time I watched constantly. Halfway through the route, she stood, walked toward the front, then whispered, "He's waiting at the bridge," and stepped off. The doors never opened. She simply disappeared. I reported everything. Everyone laughed, except one older driver. His face turned white. He asked me where she'd been sitting. I told him. The old driver said, 3 years earlier, a young woman died in a crash near the bridge. She had been riding this exact route. Same seat, same stop, same description. The next night I approached the bridge carefully. Police cars surrounded the area. A drunk driver had crashed through the barrier only minutes before, exactly where she had warned me. If I had arrived earlier, my bus would have been there, directly in the path of the collision. To this day, I don't know who that passenger was, but I know one thing. She saved every life on my bus. And according to official records, she was already dead. For weeks, I tried convincing myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe stress, maybe exhaustion, maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew what I had seen, and what I had seen wasn't normal. Life slowly returned to normal. The route stayed the same, the passengers stayed the same, and eventually, I stopped thinking about the woman in the gray coat. Until one rainy night, almost 6 months later, the radio on the bus suddenly crackled. A voice whispered through the static, "Ethan." I nearly slammed on the brakes. Nobody should have known my name. Not through the bus radio. The voice disappeared as quickly as it arrived. I checked every mirror, every seat, every corner of the bus. Nothing. The bus was empty. Or at least, that's what I thought. When I reached the final stop, I looked into the rearview mirror, and my blood turned cold. The woman was back, sitting in the last row, exactly where she'd always sat. The gray coat, the pale face, the empty expression. I spun around immediately, but the seat was empty again. My heart pounded. I wasn't imagining things anymore. The next night, she appeared again, and the night after that, and the night after that. Always in the last row, always watching, never speaking, until one stormy evening, she finally stood up, slowly walked down the aisle, and stopped beside my seat. For several seconds, she simply stared through the windshield at the road ahead. Then she whispered, "He's closer now." A chill ran through my body. Before I could ask what she meant, she vanished, just like before. The following night, a heavy storm rolled across Oregon. Rain hammered against the windshield. Visibility was terrible. The streets were almost empty. Around midnight, I approached the old bridge, the same bridge where the accident had happened. And that's when I saw someone standing in the middle of the road. A man, wearing dark clothing, motionless, watching the bus approach. I hit the brakes. The bus skittered across the wet pavement, but the man never moved, not even an inch. I flashed my headlights. Nothing. No reaction. Then, suddenly, the figure stepped backward and disappeared over the bridge railing. My stomach tightened. There was no splash, no sound, nothing. As if he had vanished into thin air. When I finally crossed the bridge, the radio burst into static again. Then came the woman's voice, clearer than ever before. "Don't let him board." The transmission ended. Every hair on my arm stood up. The next stop was only a mile away, and as I pulled up, a single passenger was waiting. A tall man wearing a dark coat, his face hidden beneath the shadow of a hood. Something about him felt wrong. Every instinct told me not to open the doors, but company policy required me to stop. The doors hissed open. The man stepped aboard. The moment he entered, the temperature inside the bus dropped dramatically. Several passengers immediately looked uncomfortable. The man didn't speak, didn't pay, didn't even look at me. He simply walked to the back and sat in the exact seat where the woman always appeared. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. The rest of the ride felt endless. Every few minutes, I checked the mirror. The man never moved, never blinked, never looked away from the window. Then, suddenly, every light inside the bus went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Passengers screamed. The engine died, and the bus rolled to a stop. For nearly 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the emergency lights flickered on. The passengers were still there. The bus was still there, but the man was gone. Only one thing remained: a puddle of water beneath the seat, as though someone had climbed out of a river. The next morning, police searched the bus. While reviewing security footage, they discovered something impossible. The cameras showed every passenger boarding, except the man. There was no footage of him entering the bus, no footage of him leaving, no footage of him existing at all. The only thing visible on the recording was the empty seat, and then, without warning, a dark shape appearing for a single frame before vanishing again. A week later, an investigator contacted me. He had found something connected to the bridge. 30 years earlier, a serial killer had used the area to dump victims into the river below. His body was never recovered. Many believed he drowned while fleeing police. The investigators showed me an old photograph. My hands began shaking, because the man in the picture was the same man who boarded my bus. The same face, the same dark coat, the same empty eyes. The investigator quietly asked me a question, one that still haunts me. "Are you sure he got off the bus?" I couldn't answer, because the truth is, I never saw him leave. And sometimes, when I'm driving late at night, I glance into the rearview mirror, and for just a second, I think I see someone sitting in the last row, watching me, waiting for the next stop.